did our brain evolve? So I think we all know that we are not the first species to use this brain. So the brain is something that evolved throughout the years, or the generations. So the brain is mainly an organ that processes incoming information. There is an input, and then it kind of operates, or it translates that input into a corresponding output. And that is basically, in a nutshell, what a brain does. So input translates output. And this input then obviously comes from an environment, and the translation within is mostly experience, genetics, and other factors that influence what we do with this input and how it corresponds into a nice output. We have multiple, I would say, networks or functions of our brain, and this we can identify in sets or states, I would say. So I would say that we have like 3 states of brain, evolutions of our brain. And you can see them like a bit like an onion. Like the center, the core, is the most primal layer that evolved the longest ago. And each time we add a new layer on top that functions within the set of rules that is defined by the lower layer. So the lower layer feeds information to the higher layer. The higher layers take that information, do something else with it, and then we have a third layer on top of that one. That is the most recent one, and this is actually what allows us to do more complex stuff in life. So that is one analogy. Another one is, for example, that we are like a very sophisticated algorithm. So an algorithm uses inputs. We have a lot of different inputs, how the weather is, how we're feeling, did we sleep well. All these different inputs are getting feed into the system or into the algorithm, and then it evokes an output, something that we do with it. So other animals use, or with the onion example, use the lower layers of the brain that I described, or like a previous version of this sophisticated algorithm, in order for us to understand the environment, of course. And just like any animal, we want to use optimal use of the environment, make optimal use of the environment. But this is not unique to us humans. I think every animal or every organism wants to optimize for their environment. It is important to note that each of these layers is involved with the behavioral output. Some layers can act on their own, some layers need or feed information to higher levels. Some higher levels can be able to inhibit certain lower levels. I'll go into that a bit deeper later. But you can look at it like this: like the lower layers, they receive the information. They are the first defense, the first processing that has been done, and they are like the playing field. Like we have the playing field, the players, and then the top layer is the one that is the orchestrator or the coach or something, is the one that says, okay, you go run there, you do that, you do this. And actually some players or fields are already set up that nicely, but sometimes we have to take full control of it and be able to be like, okay, I will do this, and this, you have to stand there, blah blah blah. This is not the best analogy, but I just want to point out that the top layer, so we have the bottom or the lower layer, the middle layer, and the upper layer. So the top layer, the upper layer, is able to be like a coach or a conductor, as you say, for an orchestra. It's like, okay, violins you play at that time, bass you play at that time, trumpet you play at that time. It's able to send impulses to these other lower layers and be able to take control of them if necessary. So these 3 layers, we can also say that they're like previous versions of our brain, or how others would say, older versions of our brain. The reptilian brain, for example, is the most old one, the most primal one. It's the core of what we do. Then we have the mammalian brain, which is basically on top of the reptilian brain, and it allows us for more complex stuff. And then we have the human brain, which is an adaptation of this second layer into a more specific third layer, but we'll get into that a bit later. So important to notice is a lower layer, middle layer, upper layer. So lower, the information flows from lower to upper.